Right. Well, welcome everyone to our fall speaker series, which is going to be Fall into Fitness. My name is Kirsten French, and I am one of the members at large as part of the Alumni Association board. I'm also the senior programs manager of Camp Spark and Sports Adaptations at the Northwest Association for Blind Athletes. I'm also joined by Lillian Goodman and Teresa Fabra, who will both be joining us as panelists later in our speaker series. And Lauren Kenny from Guide Dogs will be our monitor for this webinar. If at any time anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to put those into the question section of the Zoom webinar feature, and we'll be answering those throughout our speaker series, as well as incorporating some of those into our panelist discussion. So please don't hesitate to put those questions in there, and Lauren might be calling them out throughout our time if they happen to fall really well at a certain point. But as we go through this fall, I know today I'm in Vancouver, Washington, and it's starting to get a little chilly. So we start to think about staying indoors, getting a little colder, but that's also a great time to keep moving our bodies. And we're going to be talking about what are some ways that we can make fitness more accessible as a blind or low vision person, whether at home or in the community. And then to get our bodies moving today as we hit Thursday around 4:30 here, about that time that we'll be doing that here on the West Coast. It'll be a good time to get our bodies moving a little bit. We're going to do a little audio described workout before moving into our section where we will be hearing from all of our panelists a little bit about their experiences accessing fitness in their community. What are some adaptations they use, some things that they find helpful, as well as they'll be answering some of your questions. Thanks so much for everybody for joining us. So let's first start talking about fitness at home. What are some of the ways that we can make fitness accessible at home? There's a lot of reasons that you might be accessing fitness in your home, whether it's lack of public transportation in your area, maybe you're homesick, maybe it's just a time that it's, hey, I also access fitness in my community, but sometimes it's great to do it when I'm at home. And we're talking about some different ways that we can make that more accessible. One of the first ways that we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about is some audio described workouts. All of the information that I'll be talking about in our webinar today was in the newsletter that went out at the beginning of this month, including all of the links. I'll be sharing those links in just a minute. I think if there's a way to share that information. If there's not, all of those links were in the newsletter. But when we're talking about some of those audio described workouts, this is a way of how can we be accessing fitness when we're at home for any of the reasons that you might be doing it. So we'll talk first about some just audio described workouts that are recordings available. A lot of not so great things came out of the pandemic, but a lot of good things came out of it too. And one of those is we're talking about, everybody's talking about, hey, we want to access fitness in our own home. Well, that then begged the question of, great, this does need to also be accessible. One of the things is through my work role at the Northwest Association for Blind Athletes, we have virtual programming and virtual workouts. And I know some of you might be a part of that community. We have a lot of GDB alum, and we even have some of our instructors are GDB alum. One of our yoga instructors is, which is pretty cool. And all of these are recorded so that maybe you're at home and you're like, hey, I have some time. I'd like to do a yoga workout. I'd like to do some yoga. I'd like to do a cardio workout, a circuit workout, some dance aerobics, Zumba type workout, a seated workout, core stability, anything like that. And that's something that these are all fully audio described. They are visual where the person's wearing dark clothing against a light background. So there's that high contrast. And to make sure that everything's accessible. You also might have other resources that you're like, hey, here are some other resources that I've found helpful, that whether they're fully audio described or, hey, maybe I know this exercise well enough to be able to access it, whatever works best for you. But these are some great resources. I know that a lot of alum have talked about that doing any audio described workouts at home or other similar workout at home has been really helpful. Maybe as their guide starts to slow down, they're waiting for a guide, they're maybe going to go to the O&M program, and they might not quite feel comfortable yet walking around independently with their cane, but hey, I do want to get my body ready for that. So this is a great option. In addition to those audio described workouts, we're talking about them recorded, there are also live versions of this. And a lot of athletes have found that it's been a great resource to say, hey, whether I go out and work out in my community, walk, maybe join an exercise class in my community, but this is also a great way, whether it's lunchtime, 12 to 1, I'm going to join in on this workout. Great way to take a pause in the middle of the day, or this works out well in my schedule to be able to work out with a community and to find a community across the US and across the world of everybody else who's blind or low vision, to connect together both as people who have commonalities in vision loss, but also people who just want to work out with each other and encourage one another. So there's a lot of great resources. Let's also now start talking a little bit about some step counting. Betty, who's also on the board, wrote a great article in the newsletter that talks about how she's been working with some friends to build a community around step counting, that they were all finding that kind of during the pandemic, things were a little more sedentary, but great. Hey, actually, we can all be out and walking. We can all use a step counter, whether that's something really low tech, a talking pedometer, maybe it's Fitbit with a little more technology, or all the way up to an Apple Watch or other similar activity monitor that might be giving you more information. We can all use that, take our number of steps, and whether we're competing against one another. I know some people like to compete against family members of who's doing the most activity in a week, or we're tracking all of our steps to walk to a certain location. They talked about walking across British Columbia, and now they're going to Mexico. And that's a great way to, one, build community, but also just to get out and get moving. That could look different for every person, whether it's like, great, my guide and I, we're going out and we are just walking. Whether we're going to a specific location, we're walking for some exercise, we're going to work, but all of that exercise counts. You might also choose to use on your phone the health app that just happens to already be on all iPhones. That's counting steps as well. If you have that turned on, that's a great way to do that. I think something that's helpful to remember is that we can never really underestimate the impact that moving our bodies has. Sometimes it can be easy to think, okay, great, I can't go out and run 10 miles, or I don't have time to do this really long, intensive workout. But just getting our bodies out, moving a little bit, walking a little bit faster, or whatever pace you feel like, or walking up and down the stairs in your house or your apartment building, all of that is good for our bodies in a way that we can get out and get moving. One question we get a lot is, what accessible equipment is available? What are some ways that I want to work out at home? How do I make that accessible? And we're going to talk all the way from how can we kind of make something accessible, or all the way to what are some pieces of, hey, I want to get a piece of equipment that is very accessible. Talking on that low tech side of a way we can make some equipment accessible, you can take a single bike, put it on a bike trainer, and that's a great way that it is now accessible. That's something that I like to do. I just have a single bike, put it on a bike trainer. You can increase or decrease that resistance, set a timer, and do that. You could set a timer on your phone of, I'm going to bike hard for a minute, slower for a minute, hard for a minute, slower for a minute, and do that for 30 minutes. You could do anything you really like. That's a great way to take something that isn't inherently built for accessibility, but to make it accessible. You could make equipment that's already available in your house or in your whether your apartment building or your community has this, make it accessible. So let's take the idea of a treadmill that it's not audible, the buttons aren't already tactile, but we can make it tactile. We can put some bump dots or puffy paint or other tactile marker on the start button, the up button, where the speed increases, decreases to make that now accessible. And that's a great way to do it, especially if maybe you have a lot of users in your house or in your community using that. Well, it's now accessible for you, but it's also still accessible for everyone. But there's also a lot of options, increasing amounts of options available that are specifically accessibility based. Nautilus and Concept 2 are two manufacturers that have been increasing their accessibility in the equipment so that's built for blind, low vision individuals. So that's something that you can look into. And I know that information is in the newsletter. I know Lillian might chat about this later, but she likes to use a Peloton at home and finds that a great resource and finds that that works really well. So again, there are increasing amounts of equipment available. But that's going to transition us to, we've talked about, hey, I want to access fitness at home, but what about accessing fitness in my community? We're going to talk about it from a couple of perspectives where we're both talking about what are your rights for that access? What are some reasonable accommodations? And again, talking a little bit about what can we do to make equipment that is in a facility more accessible? What are some changes that we could do to make it accessible that it's not impacting anybody else, but it's now accessible to me, whether that's some high contrast, tactile, something that is available. So first and foremost, when we talk about that right to access is that all of us have that right to access, whether it is a community public type space, workout facility, a community center, your YMCA, something that's more community based, to a private option, whether it's a private specific workout. This is a powerlifting gym. This is a another specific type of workout facility. This is my apartment or community or HOA's workout facility. We have that right to that access, including with your guide dog. There have been over the years a huge amount of access barriers that I'm sure a lot of people have experienced. I know I've experienced. I've talked to a lot of athletes who have experienced, and even some lawsuits that have recently come through of that someone said, nope, you can't access this. Oh no, you have to bring someone else to orient you to this space. And with some of that information, especially something that can be helpful with some of those lawsuits coming through. Nope, actually, there just was a big one with LA Fitness that says, nope, actually, you can't require me to bring someone else to orient me to these facilities if you're not requiring a sighted person or a person without a disability to do this. No, I do have a right to access this space with my guide. No, your guide dog can't go in the pool with you, in the hot tub with you, but yes, they can be on the deck of, hey, I'm going to work out, I'm going to swim some laps, I'm doing this aqua aerobics workout. Great. They're just tied down um to a pole that is what attaches to the slide that kids sometimes slide down. Nobody's using it right now. I'm going to tie her up right there, put a mat down for her, and she's just going to hang out there while I do this workout, while I swim. We have that right to that access. Pete wrote a really good article that's really detailed in the newsletter that talks about some of those rights, both from a physical standpoint, but also from a communication standpoint. And that's as we're going to start moving into that. What are some reasonable accommodations? All of those reasonable accommodations are that right to what is going to make the information, the teaching, the structure that is accessible to everybody else, whether they're sighted or do not have a disability, have the right to that access. The same is true for someone who's blind, low vision, has a disability. And that also is true in the communication aspect. So let's say you go into a workout facility, you're going to go in and you want to take a um, yoga class. Okay, great. You're going to do a yoga class. You're like, great. Where's a good place for my guide to wait? I'm going to tie them up here. Okay. And I need to be the person, I need to be sitting the close to the instructor. I'm going to be able to see that person best. So I need this specific seating. This is going to work best for me. You have that right to say, this is where I need to sit best to have that access. You have the right to have that access to say, to talk with the instructor, hey, I just need you to describe everything. If you could just tell me what your body is doing, then I'm going to have that access, as opposed to, I'm not going to have that visual information. So I do need you to describe it. If I'm doing something wrong, please let me know. Hey, we're doing downward dog. So actually you need your hips pushed up in the air and both feet are on the ground. Okay, great. Oh, that's good to know, to have that access. And a lot of times those accommodations are really small. They make a huge difference for us, but the accommodations are really small. Something else that in working with instructors to talk about these accommodations, a lot of times these accommodations are pretty small and make a difference for everybody else. While I, as someone who's blind, am asking the instructor to give descriptions to me so that I know what's going on, the people in the back are also really glad that there were descriptions too, because they now know what's going on. The right to, you're going to a new facility, to the right to say, hey, I need someone to walk around with me so that I know where the bathrooms are. I know where the group workout room is. I know where where the weights are, where the workout machines are, so that I have that orientation. Not uncommonly, a facility might hear them be like, I'm not teaching you. I'm not, oh no, that's personal trainer. No, that's not. You're just orienting me so I know where things are. And you have the right to say, I need to know how to use this equipment. Okay, this is a mechanical workout piece of equipment. This is how you use it, it's working on an overhead press. Here's where the seat is. Here's how to change the weights. Here's where the handles are. Okay, we're orienting to what the equipment is, because on it has a visual description for a sighted person. Someone else can come up to it, see that description and use it. But someone who's blind is going to benefit from that verbal description. You're not getting the information of, hey, you should start at 70 pounds. You should do 6 sets of 3 reps each. Right? Here's what that person's not building a workout for you. They're just telling you how to use it. If it's something that someone else needs to pay for example, hey, I want you to build a workout for me. Well, that's something that, because everybody else is required to pay for it, you would be as well. But that orientation, that information that is visually available is allowed to you have that access verbally, in tactile form, or others. And a lot of times is talking about some tips for our panelists are going to be talking about this more of what are some things that they've found helpful, but some tips to access. You're accessing a new place for the first time. It can be helpful to go there at a time that might not be super busy, to call the facility up. Hey, I'm thinking about joining. I have some questions. When's a time you're not super busy so we can talk more? Great. You could tell them then that you're blind or low vision, but you don't have to. That's your choice. Being prepared to answer those questions when it's, hey, I'm blind, I have low vision. You can go into as much detail as you personally choose, and to say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I need. What questions do you have? Those questions might be, oh, actually, you have to bring someone. No, I actually don't. Here's what I need from you. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but here's how it's going to be. I do have the right to access that information. Sometimes it can be helpful if you maybe have some equipment that's marked out with the tactile bump dots or other markings. It can be helpful to go, you're like, hey, I do need to use that piece of equipment when I'm here, but if it works in your schedule, go when a time when it's not super busy. That's something I know I found helpful to say, great, I'm going to go first thing in the morning. That works best in my schedule, but it's also typically less busy. So I know that I'm not having to work around more people. And sometimes it can also be helpful, especially if you're starting out, to go with a smaller facility if that works for you, because a lot of times it's a little smaller, a little more personal, and people can not uncommonly be a little more open there. That doesn't mean you can't have a great experience somewhere else, but those are some things that people have said, hey, this is what I've found helpful. And talking a little bit about that before we go into our workout, what are some things that we can do to make some equipment accessible that's already in a facility? We talked about how we can make some cardio machines accessible, bump dots. You can use it using AI to know, right, what is the starting off at? Okay, the it's the treadmill's an incline of 1. It's starting at a speed of 3 miles an hour. Okay, great. Now I know I'm going to bump it up from there. Putting some tactile markers on the up button, the start button, the stop button, anything like that. On mechanical weights, I know I like to put a bump dot on 50 pounds because then I know I don't have to start counting at 10 if I'm trying to get to a whole lot more. I can start at 50. Okay, 50, 60, 70, 80. Okay, great. I'm not having to count that every time. And the nice thing about that is there's little changes that aren't making a difference to anybody else. That somebody else might find it helpful. Great. I saw that bump dot, so I knew that that was 50. I was having trouble seeing the number. Great. Here's how I can access that. And again, those are reasonable accommodations, is to say, hey, I just need to add this, adding some sticky braille to weights to know, okay, weights are already always kept in the same place. So here's where I know 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 25 pounds, a great way, some little changes that you can make. All right. Do we have any questions that make sense to chat about now before we get into a seated workout?
We do not currently have questions, but as a reminder to folks, if you want to use the Q&A, I'll monitor those for us.
All right, everyone. So we are going to do a little bit of a seated workout. I am sitting at my desk at work right now, so I'm just going to slide my chair back a little bit and to my turn to my side. But I'm going to be describing all of this. So first up, we are going to be in, these are all from a seated position. So what I'm sitting on a chair right now. So what if you're also seated as well, I would encourage you to slide, maybe you're on a chair, a couch, or anything like that. Slide forward so that you know that both feet are flat on the ground. You're sitting up straight, but my back is not touching the back of my chair. So I have a little bit of space between my back and the back of the chair, and I'm scooted forward so that I'm still seated firmly on my chair, but I am almost at the edge. We're going to do some seated high knees. When we're doing these, if you want a little bit of extra stability, hold on to the sides of your chair. And I want you to keeping your foot at a 90-degree angle and your knee at a 90-degree angle. We're going to raise our left knee up as high as we can go while still keeping our chest upright. If I need to bend forward to bring my knee up further, then I've gone as far as my knee can go. And as that flexibility allows, it might be a little bit, it might be a lot for you, but we want to bring that left knee up as high as we comfortably can while keeping our shoulders straight up in the air, and then left foot down, and then right foot, bringing that knee up for some high knees, and then right foot down, and then you can go left, right at your own pace. However, whether you want to do this nice and slow, a little bit faster, we are just getting our body warmed up for our next exercise. I'm keeping an eye on our time, and we're going to do about 10 more seconds of our high knees. We want to really engage that core, pulling our belly button into our spine. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right. My guide's sitting next to me, and now she's getting a little excited. All right, we have now gotten our high knees warmed up. We're going to move on to some high knee core twists. So on that same position, I'm sitting on the edge of my chair, feet flat on the ground. I'm now going to put my hands behind my head so my fingers are interlocked. My elbows are pointed, my left elbow pointed out to the left side, right elbow out to the right side. So it's similar to if we were to do a sit up, but my elbows are out straight to either side. We're going to do our high knee core twist. So as I bring my left knee up in the air, I want to twist my body to the left to bring my right elbow to meet my left knee. Back down, return to our starting position. Now left elbow to right knee and return to that position. You might not be able to get your elbow and knee to meet. That's fine. Twist as far as you're comfortable and able to go, really pulling that belly button into your spine. And keep going. High knee and a core twist. Right knee to left elbow, left knee to right elbow. All right, let's get a good about 30 seconds of that. Getting a little bit of a crunch on both sides. You might feel your body warming up just a little bit. All right, 10 more seconds. And 3, 2, 1, return to our starting position. From here, we're going to go to our, from here, we're going to get to our seated crunches. So same deal, we're moving from that same position we were in before. My fingers are interlocked behind my head, elbows out to each side, and I'm going to tuck my chin into my chest. I'm going to bring my, as I curl my shoulders down towards my hips, I'm pulling up my belly button in to my spine. I should feel a good crunch, a little bit of a burn on my abs as I bring my nose towards my belly button, and then return back up to our starting position. Let's do about 30 seconds of our crunches. Keep pulling that belly button into our spine, chin to chest and nose ends pointing towards our belly button. And 3, 2, 1. All right. Now comes my favorite and least favorite. This is kind of a little speed version of some seated core workout, but a good way to get movement in the middle of the day. We're going to do some flutter kicks. So for this, you might want a little bit more stability, so you can hold on to the edge of your chair. You can hold on to the sides of your chair, but remember, we're seated at the edge of that chair. I'm now going to tip my shoulders back almost to the back of my chair, but not all the way there. So I'm tipped back a little bit, and I'm now bringing my heels up off the ground. My legs are straight. You might bring them just a little bit off the ground. So it might be just so that your heels look just barely not touching, or they might come up a little bit higher, but we don't want to get further than having our heels at the same level as the seat of our chair. And we're going to do some flutter kicks. So I'm pulling that, my legs are straight, toes are pointed, pulling my belly button into my spine. And we're going to flutter like we're swimming through the water, getting some good flutter kicks in. For the next 30 seconds, get those, feel those lower abs burning a little bit. And see, as you get more comfortable, you feel a little more stability. Let's see if you can go a little bit faster. And 3, 2, 1. All right. We're going to finish up with some seated push-ups. So we're returning with our feet back flat on the ground. Knees are bent. I'm going to put my hands on my thighs. And I'm going to, keeping my back flat, belly button pulled into my spine. I'm going to lower my chest towards my thighs. And as I get close, I'm going to push back up. Bring my shoulders to my thighs. When I get close, push back up. And as you get a little more comfortable with this, you can always add a little bit of weight on your back. If you have that, you can do that by putting your hands on your back. You could hold a weight across your back if you got comfortable with this. Remember, keep pulling that belly button into your spine to keep that back as flat as you can. All right, 3 more. All right. Well, hope everybody got their body warmed up just a bit because we are going to move on to hearing from our panelists. So as we do this, have 2 other GDB alum, both of whom I've known for quite a while. So maybe we are excited to have them joining us, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves. If you want to share your name, your connection with GDB, and your favorite activity, physical activity, exercise. It can be anything at all. Lillian, do you want to start us off?
Hi there, this is Lillian. I am working my current dog, Spinoza, who's 8.5, and a Golden Retriever Lab Cross. I would say my favorite physical activity is either bar 3 or indoor cycling.
Excellent. Thank you. And Teresa.
Hi, this is Teresa. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So my relationship to GDB is that I went to the OMI program at the end of 2021. It was awesome. I don't have a guide dog yet, but hopefully in the near future or in the future I'll have one. And my favorite activity to do is very hard to only pick one, but I think I'm gonna pick indoor rock climbing.
Excellent. Such good choices. I would say my favorite activity is, so I'm Kirsten and I've got my guide dog Nightly, and Teresa and I went to the OMI program together, which is how we met. And mine is probably tandem biking. So our first question for everyone is,
we will chat and get in touch with.
so tell us a little bit about your experiences with accessing fitness in the community. And as you share that, if you want to share with what are some things that you have found that work, don't work, anything else that you would like to share with everyone. And Teresa, we'll start off with you.
Well, that is a very big question because there's a lot of fitness activities that I access in my community. Some of them are just going to the gym. I have a gym right in my apartment complex. It's a very small gym, which normally I always have a hard time using those machines because, of course, nothing is labeled, and I normally go there on my own time with nobody with me, just my cane. So I actually learned something that in most machines it applies. Like if you have a treadmill or a um blanking on the names, but like a bike or elliptical machine. Most of the ones that have a big screen, they have like a button on the bottom right corner to make it start, like quick start button. So
Excellent.
whenever I go there, I just tap the bottom right corner and hopefully it will start. If not, you can always call a volunteer with your phone with Be My Eyes, or there's different tools you can use if there's nobody around that can help you get it started. So that's in my apartment complex. We also go to a YMCA, me and my husband, and he's sort of my trainer. So I'm walking around with my cane, but then when I go to a machine and I need to start it, he's nice enough that he'll help me start it because they have so many machines there. It would be hard to memorize them all. And as for the other activities that I've done, like indoor rock climbing, it's an activity that you have to do with somebody else helping you. Somebody has to be your valet. So that person is normally guiding you and telling you where to find the next rock to grab onto. So I found out that having headphones on and calling the other person that's your valet so you can hear them, because when you get up high, these walls are up to like I think 40 or 45 feet tall. So when you're higher, you can barely hear them because of the echo and because of the distance. So we came up with did this, and I think a lot of people, like professionals, are using something like that, like a radio
Mhm.
system. So we use headphones and we just call each other, and I can hear him perfectly, and that's how I do that.
Yeah, those are excellent. I love those. I think it's cool how some of those little changes, that's something that works for someone else, someone who's sighted, also can add some more accessibility. How about you, Lillian?
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I also use kind of different things in my community. I mentioned that I like to do bar 3, and there's a studio across the street from me. And for that, I don't use a lot of adaptations just because in itself the exercise is where the instructor is trying to make sure that everybody knows what they're doing by being very descriptive. So mainly I just have someone help me set up my station. I have the same station, so I come in and it's the first station on the bar. That is also a great space for me because then I can tie Spinoza to my guide dog Spinoza to it during class. And then that's pretty much it. They're very descriptive. And then, when I first started, I said, if I'm standing there and I look very confused, please come over and, actually tactily put me into place, because I found that's helpful for me. There's also another larger gym near me that I found because I was wanting to go swimming and swim laps. And so basically what I did is I just, called them up and told them my situation, and I had different solutions and suggestions that I could use to be able to swim independently. The solution we kind of came up with was to put because I need something at either end to notify me that I'm coming up to the wall, to put one of the lifeguard kind of I forget what they're called, but like the
Buoys.
flotation, yeah, at either end. And so I just made it with them that, when I would come in, I would say, can you get up my lane set up? And they would do that. And then I could swim independently. And then, while I'm swimming, my guide is just tied to either the bleachers or a chair near my lane. And then, let's see, I'm looking at my, I also have 2 apartment gyms, one that's kind of in the unit itself, and then one that's kind of across the street. And so I found that the one in kind of the unit or in the building is kind of more touchscreen, so it wasn't really something I could use. But we found that kind of across the street there was treadmills that actually had buttons, and so I just talked with them to be able to label it with either Braille or bump dots. And then I guess another thing is in my apartment, I was fortunate to be gifted a Peloton bike. So I have that in my unit, and it's got talk back on it. So if I need to change the resistance or the speed, I can tap the screen and then verbally get what's on the screen. So I think that's an overview of what I access.
Yeah,
It's
cool.
Lauren. I'm jumping in. We're getting some really good questions, and
Mhm.
one is really relevant right now. Lillian, the question is, can you tell
Huh.
us what bar 3 is?
Oh,
Can you
yes.
explain, I guess?
Sorry. I always get that question. It's kind of derived from ballet, so you're mostly in a stationary position, and it's a lot of squats and simple movements with weights, and you're in a studio that has like a ballet bar around the perimeter, and in the middle is just kind of an open space. So you're either doing exercises at the bar or kind of in the open space. And so what I do if we're kind of in the open areas, I'll square off from the bar and just kind of step, a few spaces in front of it. And then, I'm able to kind of know, my space.
Thank
I
you.
like how Lillian, you also talked about how you have a specific place that you work out. I know that's something that where I I work out and it's a powerlifting gym, and yep, I always use the first rack, and that's where I have bump dots, have everything that's marked around there. And there's a reasonable accommodation to ask of like, hey, this is the specific space I'm going to use. Again, it can be helpful of, hey, I always come to this specific workout class, this workout time, I'm here at this time, but can I just always be able to use this space? And that's something that's reasonable. And especially if maybe that works best for you because it's marked, or it works best for you because there's no glare, or you're able to see something best there, or you're further away from the music, or honestly, you just picked that. And sometimes I know that I'll pick a spot that isn't the most desirable in terms of maybe it's further away from the instructor, it's something else, but it works for me because I can say nobody else is going to want this space. My guide can be tied down here. She's going to be protected, and this works well. Yeah.
So we are getting some good questions. It's Lauren, and one is just you referenced earlier, Kirsten, some of the home workouts and the links, and this person said, I don't think I received the newsletter with the links for the home workouts. Is it on the Guide Dog website, or how can I access the newsletter?
Yes, for that, you want to email Amy Salger, and she'll be able to make sure that you're connected to that.
And I will put Amy's email address in that, let's see, I'll answer the question for that individual.
Okay, perfect. And I saw the next question, one of them talked about, someone had asked if there's audio described Tai Chi workouts available, and there's Tai Chi and Qigong. We've worked with a studio that has, and there might be others in addition to the ones that we offer, Tai Chi and Qigong, but there's some really good ones. She's really descriptive, and a lot of people have really liked those. I'm going to ask everybody group, one of the questions that was in the Q&A was pros and cons of stationary bike versus treadmill. Lillian and Teresa, do either of you have a preference, and why? We're going to start with Lillian this time.
Well, I use both. I would say I would prefer the at least, my case, the Peloton, just because I'm a person that needs to be in some sort of class, having someone tell me exactly, okay, you're gonna do, this many seconds of going really fast. And on the, with the classes you get that. Versus on the treadmill, half the time I don't really know like what I should be, like how to change it up versus just, walking and running. Obviously I can do that, but yeah, I think that would be kind of my answer.
So, Teresa.
So I think it depends on what your goals are for fitness. For me, I like them both. I think I prefer the stationary bike too, because with the treadmill, I feel like I'm always having to hold on to the handles, and if I'm going too fast, like my hands start getting sweaty and things like that. But it's just like I feel like if I let go, I might veer or like might step on the wrong side of the treadmill, not on the band that's moving, and I might trip and fall. So I'm always like holding on with one hand or with both hands. So, but I would say that recently I ran a 5K with a sighted guy, and I practiced on the treadmill, and it was great. So if your plan is to run a 5K, definitely the bike is not going to make that for you. You need to train on the treadmill. But I think if you just want to work out, both are great options. One is more like your core is stationary, unless you're doing like power bike, right? Maybe you need to stand up or I don't know, but I know some people do like have to stand up to pedal faster or something. But if you're like a regular person working out, in my experience, like you have more stability if you're worried about that when you're sitting down. and you don't have to worry too much about falling or tripping or anything like that that you would have to worry with a treadmill when you're trying to run.
I love both of those answers, and I'm going to echo both of them of I personally prefer biking more. But again, as Teresa said, if you are training for a 5K or other running, you definitely do need to run. And that's a reminder I have to give myself of, nope, you do need to run if we're training for this 5K. And I think it's also that good reminder that I know sometimes people talk about, well, I'm having trouble finding a guide runner to run with. I think all of us have mentioned different times that it's really hard to find a guide runner, but to not discount that using a treadmill is going to be helpful to practice so that when you are able to run with your guide runner, great. You're like, yep, I've been practicing, and it's a great way to practice this. And again, whatever you're looking for. All right. What is everybody? So the question I have for everybody is, what is your favorite adaptation or accommodation as it relates to working out? Can be anything at all.
Hmm.
All right, Lillian, we'll
Oh,
start
sorry.
with you. No, that works right.
Well, I don't know.
You can also name a couple.
I mean, I do really like the Peloton bike. It's, it's not cheap, but it's I like that, I can go on it, use TalkBack, uh, get my stats, all by myself, because a lot of times when, you're going to a gym or whatnot and you're wanting to use a stationary bike, yeah, you can just get on it and ride it. But, a lot of times, unless you have another, way to get those stats, you're not always, getting those. Um, that's one. I've also used, a thing called a swim tapper, which is basically, let's see if I can describe it. It's basically a kind of a stick with a ball in the end that kind of goes across, maybe halfway across the swimming lane, and then it hooks on to the lane with kind of a C clip. And so I put those at the end of each at the flags of at the either end of the lane, so that when I'm coming up to the wall, I can hit those and then know that I've got a couple more strokes to the wall. I think, yeah, that's what I would say.
Excellent. How about you, Teresa?
Well, as I said, like when I do exercise, Lillian, I love that you have the Peloton bike. I think that it's great to have a lot of independence in what you're doing. So in my experience, sadly, because the gym that I go to is very big and I haven't asked for accessibility, so I guess I should ask for more, like to include me a little bit more. And that's something I need to work on. So thanks for making me aware of this. So I think what I like is, as we were talking about, like the rock climbing is like a teamwork. Somebody's like kind of guiding you, but you're doing all the workout. Because honestly, I feel great after I do it. I feel so accomplished when I rock climb because somebody's guiding me, but you're actually having to use your body to find the next step, the next hold for your hand, for your feet. So you're really like, maybe somebody cited would take 3 minutes to go all the way up 40 feet. Maybe it's going to take us 10 or 12, but we're going to be using a lot of our muscles. So like when I'm down after doing it a couple times, I'm very sore, but I feel like very happy that I was able to go all the way up. So I like having the opportunity to work with other people because I think we're all like benefiting from learning from each other, and they're benefiting of learning like, how do I explain this to somebody who's blind? So I like that education portion that happens when you work one-on-one with somebody else.
That's fantastic. I would agree. I really like how you talked about that education piece, and it really is mutually beneficial. I think I would say for me either, I always really like audio descriptions because it's something that it's such a simple adaptation that can make everything really accessible. And it's something that I found working with instructors and have talked with instructors that they're saying, actually, that made me a better instructor because I had to figure out how I'm going to explain it, and that other people in the room who all can see say, this was more helpful because I knew exactly how my body should be moving. And my other one would be any of the bump dots, because I love that you can just add them to anything and they are so small but make a world of difference. So one bonus question that we're asking that somebody asked in the Q&A was how it can be really tricky to find a tandem bike captain. What's some advice that you all would give to people for getting connected with either a tandem bike captain or a guide runner? Teresa, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm lucky enough that I found Northwest Association for Blind Athletes because I don't have to worry about finding a captain. They have activities, well, once or twice a month, and sometimes they have the tandem tandem bike riding. So when they do, you already have a captain. There's going to be a volunteer there. So that's pretty nice because it's like a no-brainer. I want to go tandem bike riding, and I just sign up for that, and I don't need to worry about finding one. And it's the same for running. They also have running and hiking activities, so that's great. I think it's a little bit tricky finding them in the community, but I think it's totally can be done. Actually, the guy that ran with me the 5K, he's retired. He's 70. So it was really cool. It was like a friend of a friend, and we found each other somehow. And he was like, well, I like to run. And I'm like, well, I want to try running. So he developed this, like he researched and he made our tool that we use to hold on to each other. Like it was a PVC tube with a little bit of rope. And he developed it. I was really happy that, and I was very happy too to have the freedom to do it. But it was like a good experience for both of us. Instead of him having to think like, oh, I'm gonna have to run with somebody, he was very like also motivated to run and to run with me. So I don't know. I was lucky, I guess, for finding that one.
That's fantastic. Lillian, how about you?
Well, I also participate in NWAB events. So I would say, I've met a lot of guides through that where, we're paired up, for a specific event, and then, I ask to get their contact information and we stay in touch. And then, I, reach out if I need a guide. I've also taught family and friends to be guides using various resources. There's an organization called United in Stride, and they have a video of how to teach people how to guide. And so I would usually, if I was going to meet up with someone new, I would send them that link so they could kind of get an idea beforehand of how to guide. But then, once we got together, we would kind of, iron out things and figure out how to work together. I would say also too, there's a lot of organizations out there, that work with people with disabilities. So, just connecting with them in your community. Trying to think. I've just, also just put it out on Facebook that I'm looking for a guide, and sometimes I'll get responses. It's just really about, somebody and then they know somebody, and then you just kind of get connected that way.
Cool. I think I like what both of you said, especially just that asking around if you happen to be yeah, so that there's just really just asking around that, whether it's Northwest Association for Blind Athletes is in your area, United in Stride, Achilles, and really just that asking around is a good reminder. I know for myself of looking around for guides is usually just kind of, it's a friend of a friend, and just that reminder of sometimes you'll start with that guide and that person's like, oh, I've never done this before. I don't think I can. Or is like, I don't really know how to do this. Honestly, I'll teach you and we'll be good. And I know something that I found when working with a guide, whether it's a bike captain or a ski guide or a running guide, that the person who's just is open to learning, or the person who's just like, hey, I'm just thinking about what might work, as Teresa described, of, hey, maybe the person didn't have any experience with it beforehand, but was open to learning, that person who is going to be, I found can be really effective for that, even if they have no experience beforehand.
I know it's Lauren. I know we did have someone with a hand raised, and I know that for
Oh,
some
okay.
when you're calling in
Mhm.
or joining by phone, the Q&A feature can be difficult, but it looks like they put their hand down. So again, if you're calling in and
For one more.
you need us to have you ask your question live, please do. There are a couple other questions if we want to do some of those.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer a couple of them. Sorry, did you want to ask? 'Cause
It's up to you all.
I
You
don't.
can keep going, Kristen. I know you said you were going to maybe answer, Kirsten, you're going to answer some of them.
Yeah, a couple of the answers questions were a little like kind of quick, short answer
Okay.
ones. And if you might have already answered them. I might have missed some of them being answered.
Yeah, one person was curious if any of you have tried Orange Theory, and if so, if you have any tips for
Yeah,
that.
I have
I
not.
have-
Has
I
anybody
have
else?
not. There's one close to me, but I decided against it just because there's just a lot of moving around, and I just didn't know. I mean, it's probably doable. I just at the time I didn't really know how to make it work. So yeah, I'd be curious to know if anybody has tried it and what their experience has been. Um,
This is Teresa, and I have not tried it.
Okay. Yeah, so some suggestions for it that can just be helpful. Of one, kind of going back to general suggestions, it can be helpful. One, talking to someone beforehand. If you feel more comfortable, not because a facility requires you, but you're like, I'd feel more comfortable if I went with someone the first time, you can reach out to a friend. You can ask the facility of like, hey, I'm bringing someone with me, and they're going to provide some descriptions. This is a way to access this. Can they come in for free? They might not really be working out. We're just going to be it together. This is going to help that access. That's a reasonable question for you to ask. If that's your choice, again, the facility isn't requiring that. Sometimes going at a less busy time, if you're like, hey, what class is less busy? This is going to be helpful. And I think something that I found helpful when working out is just not being afraid to make an accommodation for something for myself. If it's, hey, we're in this workout, we're throwing a medicine ball back and forth to each other. And I'm like, honestly, I'd rather not have someone throwing a medicine ball at me. So I'm going to throw it against the wall because I'm still throwing, catching, we're still doing that movement, but it's making a noise against the wall. So I feel more comfortable with that. Or asking for an accommodation. Other people are asking for accommodations for their own needs. So you're welcome to do that as well. But I think that's a great question. What else? What other questions were in there, Lauren?
There is a question on there if you all are from, I believe it is if you're familiar with the Blind Sailing Club.
Yeah.
The question is, do you know about the Blind Sailing Club?
I know there are a couple around that we've done some events with blind sailing. There's a friend of mine does a lot of work with blind sailing up in Toronto, and they are around. I think the really cool thing about sailing is that you can make it really accessible. It's really tactile once you're learning the sport and you're good. And I use the compass on my iPhone with voiceover on. And if the guide's like, hey, we need to go blank, and is just describing, hey, and we need to turn to 45 degrees north. And I'm like, great, we're at 43. It's a little turn or it's a big turn. That information is really helpful.
And I think the one other question here that we haven't been able to get to is going back to, we were talking about swimming earlier. If you know, do cruise ships have to allow guide dogs in swimming and hot tub areas?
Great question, because this is one that gets a lot of confusion. Yes, they are allowed in that area. A lot of people will say, a lot of cruise ships their understanding is, well, they can't be in the pool. And you're like, no, they're not in the pool, but they are tied up to a chair in that space, they are required to have the same access. And that's true in all those areas. Your dog can't join you in the operating room. Please don't. But we're knowing, like, is it really that health and safety access? No, it's not. They're just in the area tied down. I went on a cruise about a year ago and found it really great. People were really welcoming in terms of the other people. If I'm swimming, she's tied up, and everybody was really good at not bothering her. I came back and someone was like, oh, I happened to look at her and here's what she was doing. She was really content. And I'm like, oh, thanks. But it was good. But yes, they do have to let you have that access.
And if we do have time for another question,
Yeah.
we do have Kelly has raised her hand, I think is calling in. Kelly, I'm
Great.
going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hmm.
Let's see, did I do it successfully? Looks like you are still muted, so I am going to ask to unmute you, and hopefully that will work, Kelly.
Hi there.
Oh.
This is Kelly.
Hi,
I just
Kelly.
want to say great job, Kirsten, Lillian, and Teresa. Thank you so much for leading this speaker series and doing a terrific job.
Thanks so much, Kelly. So glad y'all could join us.
Of course.
All right, everyone. So it is now 5 o'clock. So we are going to wrap up our time together, but thank you all so much for joining us. And thanks especially to Lily and Teresa and Lauren for giving up an hour at the end of their day to join us. But hopefully you all can get out, stay active in the fall. And we hope you can join. We'll be sending out more information about the next speaker series, which will be in about January. But have a great day, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.